Welcome everyone. Thank you so much. I'm excited, and I'm just really can't wait to get started on this conversation we're going to have today with a guest of ours by the name of Jim Deitch, and we're going to talk baseball. We're going to talk a lot of things, and we're going to see how all of these all these different analogies, but really how they hit home when it comes to how to legally start winning with an unfair advantage. And again, we're going to talk technology. Yes, we are going to talk baseball. And we've even got our CEO, Alex Kutsishin, on as well. Guys, say hi to us.
Hey, we're here. We're not pictures. We're real.
But I do have pictures of everyone. So we're gonna have some fun with this, right? So today we're gonna talk about the lineup for today's call, right? So our starting lineup for today, again, Jim Deitch, CEO of Terra Verde, writer for the NBA, Alex Kutsishin, CEO of Sales Boomerang, and even myself, I'm playing a position, maybe utility player, Pablo Troncoso, director of training with Sales Boomerang. Let me share with you a little bit about Jim. Jim Deitch is the CPA CMB founder of Terra Verde. After serving as CEO of 5 federally chartered banks for over 25 years, Terra Verde advises over 200 clients in mortgage banking, capital markets, and financial technology, ranging from the largest U.S. financial institutions to independent mortgage bankers. He served on MBA Residential Board of Governors, CEO, panelist, and speaker for major financial institutions, financial industry associations, corporate clients, and the DoD and several universities. He is a thought leader and has published 3 #1 best-selling books, including Strategically Transforming the Mortgage Banking Industry. Jim, you are a man who is certainly a category king. So welcome to the call. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Pablo, for the next time, we need like cheering as in the background with all these beautiful graphics.
Alex, everyone knows who you are, or at least here at Sales Boomerang, and so you're an innovator, you're an entrepreneur. It's always a pleasure to get to work with you and work on all these amazing projects and all the stages that you share with such leaders like Jim and many others that we've had and that we've had a chance to come alongside of. So I'm not going to take too much time to talk about your background, but just know that we also just recently got voted number 101 on the Inc. 5000 list. So congratulations on our first time coming out for and applying for that. So congratulations to that.
Congratulations to us. You're one of the reasons.
That's right. That's right. And out of all the things that I have here, I'll just say the last thing that's probably most important is this last line. Above all else, faith and family is my greatest achievement. And as a devoted husband and proud father to my 2 little ones, Luca and Antonella, I'm following in your footsteps, gentlemen, and as far as growth and development. So let's get started. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that are ready to start diving into the expertise and all the fun facts and stories that you all have. Jim, I've got some questions for you.
Go ahead.
You and I have had some incredible conversations just in the last 30 days or so in kind of anticipation for this call. Now, you and I have talked about what are some things that we want to discuss, but just so everyone knows, this webinar is not scripted. I have some questions that I've written down. Jim doesn't necessarily know what they are. Alex might know what they are simply because he knows me. He's inside my brain. He's the guy. But it's non-scripted. It's no BS. And we're going to just ask some real questions. But man, Jim, I was going back and listening to some of your past podcasts because, man, you've got a really, really interesting story. Everything from kind of where you came from in entrepreneurship and kind of following your grandfather's footsteps. I think that's awesome. I want to hear a little bit about that. But right off the bat, I want to talk about one story that I think immediately is going to capture people's imaginations on how we can all improve right off the bat. You don't have to be sick to get better. So tell me the story about Citi versus Amex. If you can share a little bit about that and what we can maybe learn from that.
No, absolutely. I'll be happy to do that. So I was booking a flight on American Airlines, and I've been a longtime customer of American Express. I usually don't leave home without it, but recently I have been. And the reason is this. As I was booking the flight on American, it came time to pay. And American had enough data on me to know that I was using an American Express card. So I'm getting ready to pay, selected American Express to pay it. This little window pops up and it says, would you like a Citicorp Executive Platinum, whatever? And I closed the window and said, don't bother me. And as I continued forward, it popped up again and said, you will have free Admirals Club membership. Now, they know that American Express lost its Admirals Club sponsorship and Citi now has it. So I said, well, that's kind of interesting. It's always nice to go to the lounges, and this was pre-COVID. And I said, okay, tell me more. So it was, well, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. And they essentially knew how many flights that I used. They had a pretty good idea of how much I used the credit card. And then they made the pitch and said, for $450, we'll give you this. And I said, no, thanks. I don't need another credit card. And then it came back and said, well, we're going to waive the first year and give you 50,000 miles on American. And I thought, that's all right. So I did it. I signed up. And it was literally two questions. Do you consent to have your credit pulled? And do you agree to check on this agreement? So the next morning, knock on the door, Federal Express shows up, and there's this box, and it's from Citi, and it has my American or my Citicorp Platinum American Airlines card, and it's in this nice box. I open it up, I take it out, and I look at it, and it's got a guide in there. It's got all these other things. I'm thinking, like, I have no intention of leaving American Express because I've used it since 1988. And guess what? I'm now using that Citi card, and it's just because they knew who I was, and they hit me at a time when I needed to use a credit card, and I was vulnerable because I'm going to fly on that airline to say, wouldn't it be nice to go to the Admirals Club without paying for it, and so forth. And what that said to me is, data and knowledge and hitting the customer at the right time is absolutely essential to winning. And it really started to get me thinking about this whole topic of how can you win and how can you have an unfair advantage and win the game? And that's really how this webinar came to be. So Pablo, I hope that's what you're expecting.
I mean, Alex, what do you think of that? So I'm sure you maybe heard that story.
I have not heard that exact story from you, Jim. I'm glad I'm hearing it now. To me, you used the word vulnerable. I would say the better word is receptive, because what happened in that scenario is a real great reason to invest in technology, is to better serve your customers. But not better serve them when it's better suited for you. Better serve them when it's better suited for your customer. I'm going to give an example. I won't give names. I was involved in an event where I was going to be speaking on stage, and the event coordinator was pushing and pushing and pushing to have us deliver our presentation as early as possible so that they had an easier time putting things in line of how they should be presented. To me, that was a huge mistake. As presenters, and many presenters know this, our best ideas come from the day of or the night before, right? And we can listen to other speakers and go, ooh, I love what Jim said, and put it into the presentation. My point is this: that group made it very difficult for me and other speakers, but they wanted to make it easier for them. So you don't want to use technology that makes it easier just for you and worse for the customer. What you just said, Jim, is they perfectly timed the message when they knew you were most receptive and can actually experience the greatest benefit if you just give them a chance to be heard. And that's how technology should be used right there. That's like in a nutshell. I love it.
That's so good. So let me ask you, Jim, today, are you 100% Citi, or are you some Citi, some Amex? Where are you at in the mix?
So it's 70% Citi, 30% Amex. And but I think the interesting thing is that two things come up. American Express is a great marketer, and they could detect the fact that my spending habits with Amex have declined considerably. But I haven't heard anything that says, hey, would you like to talk to us about why this is so? Or is there anything that we could do better to induce you to use the card more? Are there other things that you might consider charging on American Express? There's been none of that. Interestingly, on the Citi side, because of COVID, I don't fly nearly as much. And the offers coming in from Citi about, would you like to look at some special fares? Because I know I live in Naples. So here's some things coming out of Naples airport to various places. And when you think about it, the airlines and the credit card companies have almost perfect knowledge of what you're doing. They know where you're going. They know what you're spending. They know where you're spending it. So that amount of data is just sitting out there waiting to present opportunities to people that, as Alex says, are receptive.
Yes.
And what's really amazing to me is in the mortgage banking business, we have just oceans of data everywhere. I mean, everywhere you look, there's data. There's servicing data, origination data, credit data, all these behavioral characteristics and all this information on a consumer. And those oceans of data essentially have hidden treasures in them somewhere, but we don't necessarily go out and explore. And that's kind of a question I've been scratching my head about.
Right. Well, it's interesting you talk about these, that Alex, you even chimed in and said, hey, it's to be receptive. So data can actually be almost segmented as receptors, right? And then as you start to add receptor on top of receptor, you actually can have a more receptive consumer. And so it almost seems like, man, if, as lenders, we need to be looking at how can we position ourselves so that we can now stand out in front of our borrower to best serve them at the most receptive time. And so I just think that's really interesting. I've heard you talk about how even banks, because they have such a unique way of credit qualifying, that they actually have more access and can utilize that. I want to talk about that a little bit more, but I'm just curious because there was something that I heard you discuss. And you call this, I mean, my mother used to work in dentistry for about 15 years. And you said that a mortgage loan process. And by the way, I'm sorry, before I even get started, I didn't even say this. For everyone that's listening, and thank you so much for tuning in. Again, this is Jim Deitch of Terra Verde, CEO of Terra Verde, just an expert in mortgage technology and banking technology. I've got our CEO, Alex Kutsishin, and we're having a conversation on all things tech and how to improve and have an unfair advantage. If you have questions that come up, please drop them into the chat. Yeah. We've got people monitoring them. I'm trying to monitor it myself, but with these guys, I get so focused on the conversation, we will get to your questions.
Yes.
So the mortgage process, I was listening to a conversation you were having, and man, I got blown away because you said, hey, you were talking about the loan application for an automobile. Right. In an afternoon, you can get qualified for a $50,000 loan. But if I want to do a $500,000 loan, and if we just took the auto loan industry, it should take 10 days, right? 10 times 50,000. But it doesn't. It takes, you related it to a 45 days of a root canal. And I just thought that was hilarious. Can you talk to us about that and maybe why is the mortgage lending process so much more difficult in a capital-driven economy than it is for lending in other sectors of the consumer markets?
Well, I think Alex has made a great point. And when you think about when you structure a process, is it to be convenient and conducive to the customer, or is it really the producer, the product provider that you're bending that process for? So if you think about the typical mortgage process, and I've gone through it a couple times in the last couple of years, but the story I like best to convey is the first time my daughter bought a home in Texas. She went through the process, and she's a process engineer. She is a materials science engineer, so she's in the manufacturing, quality, and efficiency business. And she got into this application, and it was kind of like going back and forth. Can you give me this? Can you give me this? Can you give me this? So 15 days into this, she calls me up and says, Dad, your industry is the most screwed up industry I've ever dealt with. It's worse than getting a root canal. I mean, I'd rather get a root canal than continue forward with this process. I'm asked for the same thing time and time again. I'm asked for information that is readily available I've already provided. And it seems like this is just a process in which it's walking down a football field with 10 different people standing there with baseball bats, and they're each taking their turn hitting you. And And after all this process, it's like 45 days later, it ends, you go to settlement, you sign all these documents, and it's like, that was really horrible. And it was just, it's just amazing from her perspective. So after all that, she called up and said, you know, I bought a car 2 weeks ago. I walked into the Nissan dealership. I picked out the car. It took them about 10 minutes to qualify me. I signed it. I didn't put any money down. I drove it away. The house is attached to a foundation, but the car could go anywhere. I could drive it and, you know, just drive off with it. Your industry is totally screwed up. And that's the perception of a consumer. And I think it's so true, because we accept what we put people through because that's what the secondary market requires. I don't know that we really think about how to streamline that process. And if we could do it over again, how we would do that. So that's the story. And if you'd like, we'd love to hear your next question, or Alex, jump in. I don't know if you've gone through the football field with people chasing you with baseball bats, but that's not the customer.
The drill in your mouth.
I'd want to have.
Yeah. I like the analogy of I'd rather go see a dentist to get a mortgage done. I mean, geez, that's I mean, look, ouch, right? Like that hurts. Like I even put it in chat, and I was hoping some people could chime in on that. It's like, I think we are in a position right now to start rethinking that. I think we can reshape this industry. And it's those analogies and having enough people go, that is what it's like. Yeah, why can I drive off in $100,000 car, but I can't buy $100,000 house at the same speed? I mean, that's insane, right? And so I think these are the conversations that should inspire the people listening to start asking questions, and let's see how we can change the way this process works, because we're one of the only countries that makes it this difficult to buy a house. Other countries, I mean, it is a one-day experience, right? But not here. And so, you know, it's the regulations. We know that, right? The regulations meaning root canal, right? That's the root canal for you. The dentist is just the dentist. The procedure is the procedure, right? So I'm a loan officer. I'm just a dentist, but this procedure requires 45 days instead of 1. So I'm following the procedure. So yeah, it's shocking and uncomfortable.
You know, and Jim talks about, I've heard you talk about this, and I've read about where the income portion, right? So we all know that, you know, credit, income, equity, or, you know, or cash is what's going to, you know, qualify you for a loan, but that how there's so much kind of wasted assets, wasted time and resources on qualifying income. And I love how you share how, you know, if you have the income that's required, right, to get to that DTI up until the day of the loan, right, closes and funds. But if you change that income a day later, if you become self-employed, you lose the income, you whatever, there's no tracking of that. So why was it so important to use so many resources to do that? And there's again, just areas and spots that we can start to really look at consolidating time and effort. But I don't want to go in that direction, but I did think it was a very important point as far as some areas that we can start as an industry, not just as one lender at a time, because I really do want to talk about baseball. I really want to talk.
There we go.
All
right, and we're in
about to start
Baltimore,
chewing here.
So we're in Baltimore. So if you follow anything about the Orioles, we need a really good baseball talk, because no one's having one right now out here. But you had a really interesting encounter with Billy Beane, right? Billy Beane, the EVP of the Oakland Athletics, right? The real life person and that famous baseball movie Moneyball, right? That movie was depicting. So what is baseball? What does that movie Moneyball have anything to do with technology and mortgages? I can't wait for you to share some of what you shared with me.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And interestingly enough, I had a chance to sit down briefly with Michael Lewis, who wrote Moneyball, as well as The Big Short, Liar's Poker, and Blindside. And an insight I got from that discussion was when Michael Lewis writes a book, he always asks the question, you know, what am I trying to figure out here? So Michael Lewis described the question in writing Moneyball as, if the market for baseball players were perfectly efficient, the teams that have all the money, like Boston, New York, LA, would hire the best people, and everybody else would just be underfunded, and they would lose every game. But that's not how it happens. So he asked that question of Billy Beane early on in the book, and Billy said, I think about that question every day. And you're the first person that's ever asked me about that question of how and why, if the market were efficient, you would have the best players with the best teams and everybody else would just be scrimmage bait, right? And the discussion ensued, and the discussion I had with Billy Beane was, how do you use data? How do you kind of find the elements of data to tease out what is really important? And in the mortgage business, the parallel is this. What is it you're trying to do? Well, you're trying to get a loan closed. In baseball, what are you trying to do? You're trying to win games. So in the mortgage business, the question we face is, how can you do it for the least amount of cost so that you can do it more quickly and more cheaply than anybody else? And if you figure that out, that's an unfair advantage that you can take advantage of simply because you've thought about the process and you've set up your business to be more efficient than your competitors. And in baseball, what Beane said is we measure what matters. Measuring what matters is really important. And what Billy described to me was we want to win games for the least amount of salary cost. So how do we win games? We don't do it by hiring players. We do it by hiring players that have certain skill sets, particularly in the offensive side, that can get on base. Why? Because you win games by scoring runs. You get runs by getting on base. And the more people you get on base, the more likely you are to win. And the least amount of dollars you can pay to get people on base is how you become more efficient. And that's how we overcome the unfair advantage of the Yankees and the Red Sox, who have all the money in the world. They can spend it on anything they want. And the answer was data. It's all about the data and how you use that data. So as I think about the mortgage lending business, we have all this data out there. It's in the LOS system, it's in all the ancillary systems. And the question is, knowing what you need to know to approve a loan, and if you started at the end of the process, you now have an approved loan ready to close. Could you walk backwards and find out just those key elements that you needed to be able to get that loan done, and then eliminate all the other noise? And if you do that, you find out something really incredible. Is there's not that many pieces of data that you really need, and you could get it if you were thoughtful about what the client was thinking about, what the nature of their purchase was. It was the first time or a refinance. And just a few metrics, you could create the path to get just what you needed without having to go through this standard process of walking down the baseball or the football field and getting whacked by everybody who does this. So to me, the discussion, I initially had with Billy Beane, I went back and said, as part of this interview for a book, so you're in the baseball business, how's this translate over to the mortgage banking or the financial services business? It translates very easily. Number one, you find the characteristics of people that are really, really customer service oriented and can get you to where you need to be very quickly. And then secondly, you empower them with not data, but the insights from that data. It's what matters. You're measuring what matters and you're equipping your people to do that. So when the right opportunity presents itself, you're able to do that. And I had a discussion with Alex a couple of months ago about sales boomerang, and I'd just like to throw it over and say, what you're talking about with what sales boomerang does, and the data and some of the things that Billy Beane has identified as really key to winning games and getting a way to overcome that unfair advantage. Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, I love the connection between baseball data and how mortgage can look at their business. I mean, there's so much waste happening in this industry, which is why we built the industry's best recycling system, right? Because there's so much waste, and we wanted to stop polluting the mortgage industry and actually clean it up. There has been several celebrity endorsements about what you're talking about right now. And the celebrity endorsements I'm talking about is these companies going public. And when they go public, they file what's called S1, which they have to disclose how their business has been operating and how they're doing in all parts of their business. So now that the public can make a decision, hey, do I want to invest into this public company or not? And one of the things that we saw from like the Guild and like the Quicken filings is their incredible retention numbers, right? They're 70%, around the 70% retention, both of them. Both of them went public, both of them are doing very well. And it is to the effect that they understand that a true sign of a healthy business, and we'll connect it to baseball in a moment, but a true sign of a healthy business is how many people come back to do business with you again. Everyone can make a mistake once. I can eat a burger at a burger shop that tasted horrible. Guess what? I'm never coming back again. I can buy clothes at a retail store that was a horrible experience. I'm never coming back again. Well, as the mortgage industry at a horrible 15 to 18% retention rate on average, we have a lot of one-time shoppers. But the best, the Quickens, the Guilds, we can keep naming some others, they show that to have this sort of growth and sustainable growth, you cannot sustain if your retention is at 50. You cannot be a nationally recognized leader if nobody wants to do business with you again, period. Okay. And so to the point that I'm trying to make here is this: repeat business is the least expensive, most profitable business you can do. It is also the business that has the highest chance of referrals, which is the most profitable and least expensive business you could do, right? And so there is something there. And for everyone on this call, I just can't yell and scream and preach enough. Try to be as bad as Quicken and Guild. I'm not asking you guys to have $10 billion sitting in the bank that you can execute on. You had to do that a decade ago. Today, there's technologies, and we're talking about technology. Today, there's technology that give you the same firepower, the same horsepower as the Quickens and the Guilds without having to spend millions or tens of millions to research and develop those technologies. Sales Boomerang is just one of those. There are many. But the point is, you want to get on base. You don't want to hit home runs, right? You want to get on base. It's proven. Get on base, get on base, get on base. And what does get on base mean? It means let your borrower hear you. When you spam, for everyone that's listening, this is important because you're using technology to spam people. When you spam, all you're doing is promoting your competitors. Every time you spam a customer, you are pushing them away from you and towards your competitors. Instead, step back a little bit, do exactly what Billy Beane did, do exactly what the A's did. They're like, we're not trying to get home run hitters. We're trying to get people that can get on base. You're not trying to close every deal. You're trying to be heard. But if you're not heard, you can't close a deal. And so take the analogy from Billy Beane in baseball. Don't try to hit home runs. Try to get on base. And on base means your customer is willing to get on the phone with you. How many of you right now listening have teams that call somebody 20 times to then get somebody to pick up the phone and say, I'm not interested. Stop calling me. Because you called them 20 times. And there's only one time that they should have been called, when they actually needed you, right? And so that same reason as Cities won Jim's business. They called him exactly when he needed them to call. Not
with the right offer too.
With the right offer, right? Exactly right. That's the point. That's exactly right. But you have to be heard. And when you're not giving yourself a chance to be heard, you have to spend way more money to get somebody to listen to you. And most of the time it's somebody new because they haven't heard you before. And woo, it's the first time I got them on the phone. Great. They haven't heard my BS before. Maybe they'll buy from me this time. Right. And so you want to get away from that thinking. You want to get to the 70% rather than the 15%. And you want to get on base rather than hit home runs. So it's a great analogy there. I love it.
Yeah, and just to continue with that a little bit, Jim. I mean, I remember watching the movie, a couple years back now, but I remember the idea was the I think the general manager at the time or whoever it was that was vehemently against this approach was that it wasn't going to be attractive baseball, right? It wasn't going to drive people to come watch the games. Like, it's not sexy,
Right.
home run baseball anymore. We're not going for the big names. You're going for the big usable data. Do you think there's a fear, a correlated maybe fear or apprehension of, yeah, I don't know that I just want to get hits. I don't know that I'm just looking to get walks, right? I like that's not how it's a go big or go home industry, right? Is there maybe a sense of that? Because when we look at this, when you say there's these oceans of data, I feel like, in the marketing world, there's what we call red oceans, right? It's the same ocean that everyone is swimming in, and it's full of sharks infested, and there's not enough to eat unless they kill themselves. And then there's the blue oceans, right? Which is the ones where it's like there's plenty of food. It's man, if you go fishing in there, you'll always be satisfied. So can you speak a little bit about to that? And it's like, how can we maybe get away from the red and into the blue if we're going to take this step?
No, that's a great question. And to Alex's point, it's really about the right person at the right time using the right technique. So I'll relay a story. The MBA has a lot of events, and you go to them and you see somebody say, "Hey, how you doing? Tell me about your business." And in the mortgage banking business, when I ask the question, "Tell me about your business," invariably the answer is, "Well, we do $600 trillion of originations." and
Show me your biggest trophy, right?
Yeah.
So and the equivalent is, we have the home run hitters that bring the people to their feet every time. They also happen to be the strikeout leaders, but they're the home run hitters that go and hit the home runs, and the crowd loves to see that. And they'll endure the strikeouts. And to Alex's point, not necessarily getting on base. But here's the corollary. When you think about what are the key things that make a business profitable, and it comes down into the origination, there are 5 metrics that matter. As Billy Dean said, there's things like on-base percentage, slugging percentage, a series of other percentages and other metrics. And you can coach a batter that if you take the first pitch and it's a ball, your chance of getting on base is now 75 points higher than if you were just starting with an 0-0 count. And if you're behind the count, the first pitch is a strike and you swing and miss, you're now going to hit 75 to 100 points below what you would do if you're just walking up. So the strategy of when to take, when to swing, what the tendency of that pitcher coming at you are really important. And that's what this whole data analytics element is about. So when you just have a single dimension, hey, I have 10 of the top 100 originators in the country, the answer is, that's great, but are they profitable? Are they treating customers the way they need to be treated? Are they retaining the business? What are the other metrics? And I would propose there are 6 metrics that you want to be looking at. The first is volume, because without volume, you're not there. But the other metrics that are just as important is, how many concessions and how many cures do you make? So are you getting the volume by giving away margin? So concessions, cures. What's your pull through? If you take 20 leads and hit 1, that's not really great. And when I look at the metrics of loan officers and direct-to-consumer agents and account reps, and you see there's some people that are pulling through 70, 80, 90% of the leads they get, and others doing 50, 60, 70, you go, do you have any idea how much that's affecting your profitability? Because you're throwing away customers. And to Alex's point, you had your at-bat, you struck out. Are they ever coming back? No. Have they potentially damaged their reputation? Yes. Have they damaged your company's reputation? Probably. So pull-through is really important. And speed. You would be surprised at how fast people can get loans done or how slowly they get them done. And the perception of speed is really important to customer satisfaction. Bill Emerson's a good friend at Quicken. And of all the things I've learned from Bill, his most important thing is every day, every promise, no matter what, we keep, whether it's getting back to people or meeting a closing date. Speed to meeting those commitments is predictive of customer satisfaction. If you make a promise and you meet it, you're going to get 800, 850 points in the J.D. Power survey. If you miss it, even if everything else is perfect, and even if you conceded the rate, you're at a 500, because when you fail to deliver a promise, you lose. The other metrics are essentially what the mix is. And mix is really important because some loans are more profitable than other types of loans and loan purpose. If you're not measuring these metrics, and if you're not doing it in a way that kind of ranks your branches and ranks your producers and ranks your agents that way, you're really not competing against the people that have the unfair advantage, the really large players who have money that can do anything and buy anything. If you're not using those metrics, if you're not taking that oceans of data and distilling it down to what matters, you're probably leaving a lot of profit on the table.
So Jim, I would ask that while I kind of respond to that or give you some thoughts on what you were just saying, I'd love to see you put those 6 metrics in chat so people can see them for themselves. I think that's a really cool thing that you just mentioned. You know, I'll give you an example. So I love how you started this question, Pablo. You said, hey, it's just not sexy. Everybody wants to see the home run hitters. We work with an amazing group, and there are many amazing groups that we work with, but I'm going to share this one. Homestead Funding out of Albany, New York, has in its history never had a down year, never had a non-profitable year, even in the 2007, 8, and 9 timeframe. What's interesting about them is they are owned by 4 accountants. So they care about metrics. They care about data. Homestead, and everyone listening, their growth chart is up and to the right for over 30 years. This isn't a company that just did it in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 6 years, 8, 12, over 30 years in business, and has never had a down year, always up and to the right. And to them, getting on base is very important. They don't care about home runs. All they know is if they keep making progress. They have an incredible tech stack, incredible. They've invested in all the best technology to continue to fulfill their mission of being extremely profitable. They're not just trying to do volume. They're trying to be profitable. They're trying to change the lives of the people in their business, not just the salespeople, which is important about building a business, right? This is key. You can build a sales team or you can build a business. We can all very clearly see who's building businesses and who's building sales teams. Okay. Sales teams actually feel fluctuating markets like that. People who build businesses, there's changes in the market, but their growth chart is up and to the right. So the encouraging piece to your question, Pablo, about, hey, it's not sexy. Profitability is sexy no matter which way you spin it, right? You may not, there's some real incredible growth stories. We have one of them as a client as well, JFQ, which is a consumer direct group. One of the most incredible success and growth stories in history that I've ever seen. I met him when he had 8 people on his team. He's got nearly 1,000 people on his team now. And how did he do it? Metrics, technology, automation, only investing in things that are going to bring a result back. And they grew extremely fast. They outgrew a 30-year-old Homestead, but they outgrew them strategically, methodically. He did not care about home runs either. If you talk to the owner of JFQ, he'll tell you, to him, it was eliminating waste. How quickly can we eliminate waste? How quickly can we eliminate waste? Eliminate waste, eliminate waste, eliminate waste. He all of a sudden very quickly understood that it isn't loan officers that should be taking and making calls. It should be people scheduling calls for the loan officer. Then the loan officer comes in to close it, not spending very high quality people that really understand the industry and can really deliver the purpose of doing a loan. They said that's a waste of their talent. But somebody that's really courteous, sweet, nice, knows how to ask a question, knows how to get somebody to say, yeah, you know what, I will talk to somebody about that. He hired an entire team to just do that don't know anything about mortgages except for the fact they're calling about them. But what they do know is people. Very sweet, very generous, courteous, bilingual, a lot of bilingual people on his team, because he understood that there's a lot of multicultural people that are going to be calling in on these opportunities. And everything he did was to eliminate waste. He said, no more waste, no more waste, no more waste. The same thing that Homestead did, but they did it a different way. They're a retail shop. So they built very carefully. They didn't hire people that didn't believe in their philosophy of growing profitably and just, hey, we're just going to buy leads and, you know, a lot of it's going to be waste, but if we close 1 out of 20, we're going to be okay. No, Homestead said, no, that's not our process. We're going to build relationships. You're going to come in here and you're going to get on base. Like that's what you're going to do. And over 30 years, we'll never have an unprofitable year, no matter what happens in the market. That to me are two examples of people that are doing it two different ways. One is in some cases, right, to your point, Pablo, maybe hitting a little bit more home runs just because they grew faster. But the only reason they grew is they eliminated waste. They said, no, you're not coming here. We're not building our business around top producers. No way. We're building our business around production in a profitable way. If you're a great producer, fantastic. We have a home for you here, but you're not dictating what we're doing, Mr. Super Producer. You're not telling us which CRM to do, which data to buy, when to buy. No, you joined us, and this is what we're doing. You are part of our business structure. So, just staying in line with what we're talking about, it is a process, and invest in that process. Don't hang your hat on one producer, then hire another top producer, because that top producer is going to leave you one day. And then what do you have? You have a roller coaster. Like, now I got to find another top producer. Build a business, build a platform, and get people to buy into your platform.
Alex, you make a perfect point, and one of the things that Billy Bean and I had a chance to talk about is just what you said. The stars, the people that you pay a lot of money, the people that are at the top of those league tables, ultimately they can leave. But the real key is finding 25 players on a Major League Baseball team that all can contribute and collectively can make sure that you are winning at the least possible cost, which the Athletics have been able to do. One of the things that I sat down with at one of these industry events was a friend of mine who's a CEO, and we were talking about that same question. So, tell me about your business. How's it going? Oh, we did $2.5 billion. So let me ask you a question. Who are your most profitable producers? And he kind of looked at me and said, well, it's probably the people doing the most. And we had one of our products installed with this lender. So I knew the answer I was asking him before I asked the question. I knew the answers to the questions. And I said, so let me just tell you that your most profitable producers are not who you think they are. Your most profitable producers happen to be the people that are doing a lot of gubby, that are mid-volume, that get the margin, have virtually no cures or concessions, that have good or reasonable turnaround time, and have a pull-through of 87% or higher. And I will show you that both dollar-wise and basis point-wise, they are the top of the stack. These are the people that are making you money every day. And some of those names you mentioned have a lot of concessions, a lot of cures. They have some uncharacteristically rough relations with your production team or with your support team. And we went through and we kind of put together a list top to bottom, from the first quartile to the bottom quartile, of who is really making you money. And the results to him were shocking. And the next question was, so what are you going to do about it? And he said, well, if I make these changes, then I'm going to have too many processors and underwriters. And my question to him was, well, don't you think we can measure processors and underwriters exactly the same way?
Yeah.
So you could go through and build these scorecards, so to speak, or these analytics on every player on your team. And you could go through and say, if I wanted to just work totally on profitability, what could I do? So about 2 months later, he called me back and he said, Jim, I hate you. And I said, well, okay. He said, I hate you because it made me do some things I wasn't comfortable with. I had to let some people go that were in the bottom of the stack. And I just wanted to tell you that although it made me feel uncomfortable, my staff reacted because all of a sudden it was clear that the better performers and the top performers were being recognized. They knew it. They knew who the top performers were in their departments. And more importantly, our profitability as a company has increased. I won't disclose the percentage, but it was a big number. And it simply was reconsidering that. And here's the refinement. We took the characteristics of the top performers in terms of profitability and customer side and said, let's go hire more people like this. Let's not go out and hire people on volume. Let's hire people that have the behaviors and the cultural aspects that fit your business. And oh, by the way, are going to produce a lot more money. And the end of the story is last year, despite it being great for everybody, he hit grand slams day after day after day because he had the right people doing the right thing with the right attitude and making the batting averages with customer satisfaction go up high. So that's how you apply this in real life. It's not hard. You already have the data. It's just sitting out in that ocean. You just need to dive down and find it.
In 2015, 2016 Premier League season, which is a soccer season, a team emerged from a lower ranking league to join the Premier League. The name of the team was Leicester City. In the 2015, 2016 season, they ran the table. They got in first place and never left first place. 95% of the people on that team were people nobody's ever heard of in their entire life. They didn't know they existed in the soccer world until they did this. It's also what?
I said still to this day.
Still to this day, yeah. But they haven't lost their Premier League since 2015. They're still in the Premier League, which is the top league. The point is, they didn't have home run hitters. They didn't have superstar names. What they had was an absolutely perfect team. The team played together. I remember all the commentators for the entire year, all they did was talk about how they win by 1-0, 2-1, 1-0, 2-1, 1-0, right? Like that's their typical scores. A couple goals here and there, maybe a couple blowout games once in a while, but 1 goal, 2 goals tops. But the minute they scored, that's it. You're not going to catch up to them. They played as such a team, and they didn't care about having a Lionel Messi or a Ronaldo on the team. All they cared about is playing as a team, and that's exactly what they did. And that's a great lesson that anyone in the mortgage industry that may be starting out with a smaller team, with less finances, less support, hey, you're in a place that you can actually mold your future without having the bad practices from previous lenders that have done it the old way. The new way is find people that believe what you believe in, build technologies using a Lego tech mindset, meaning if this doesn't fit this other technology, I'm not buying it. If it doesn't all fit together, I'm not doing it, right? The beauty of Legos, I buy any set, they all work together. Lego tech, if your team isn't thinking Legos, they're not putting technology together properly. People that believe what you believe in, technology that all works together, profitability at the core, experience for the consumer to lead, right? Lead with your mission, followed by the everything else. But your mission is to help people get into the right loan right now. Lead with that and surround yourself with people that believe in that too. And again, you could be your own Leicester City story. You can be your own Oakland A's stories. Because it's possible. And by the way, you know what's interesting? When somebody does something like that, all other teams go, we need to do that, right? They've never done it that way, but all of a sudden they emerge as this highly profitable, highly efficient, winning machine, and everyone's like, how did they do it? You have some companies in the industry now that are doing it like better.com, right? They're even naming themselves ways that consumers can go, ooh, this feels better. That's a big part of the shift that you're seeing in the industry, but it's a real thing. And like Jim said, it's not hard. You don't have to have billions to do it. You just have to be willing to do it. Like just go out there and go, all right, top producer, if you join us, you're going to follow our process. It's okay if you don't join us, right? But make sure that's a clear message. Because it's not bad to have home run hitters, but they still have to follow your process. They still need to get on base.
Right. Man, this is so great. Alex, Jim, I was not expecting this conversation to kind of go in the route of like staffing, right? I mean, we joked around like, hey, we're playing the positions on the baseball team. I didn't realize we were actually going to be looking at the team as opposed to the fans.
Yeah.
Right. So I love that scorecard idea, Jim. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, and I just want to riff a little on what Alex just mentioned. It's about the system of how you do it. And if you're going to become part of a company, you can do one of two things. You can be totally decentralized and say, here's your LOS, here's your stuff, here's your tech stack, go at it, go do business. Or you can have a very deliberate way of saying, here's what we're trying to accomplish, here's the experience we're trying to deliver, and here's the process we're going to do. So I asked Billy Beane the question, after the book Michael Lewis wrote in 2003, and after the movie in 2011, everybody knew what the Oakland A's were doing. They were using a data-driven ability or a data-driven methodology to find undervalued players, bringing them on, and when players became overvalued, they trade them for their value to essentially reinvest in undervalued players. It's kind of like a value stock analogy. So I asked Billy, everybody knows what you're doing. Why are you still successful? The market knows what you're doing. Anybody can do it. He said, Jim, there's three things. Number one, if you're going to have a system and you're going to have a culture and you're going to have a way of running your business, you need to have consistency from the top of the organization, me as assistant GM down to the bat boy. We all have to subscribe and believe in that system. Second, a system is a system. It means some years you're not going to do as well. Some years you're going to do great. But if you believe in the system, on average, you're going to do significantly better than your competitors. And lastly, discipline. When I take in spring training, the first couple people come up from the minors and they think, hey, I'm going to do it my way. And they're told to take the first pitch and they swing it and hit it out of the park and they run around and go, wow, I just hit a home run. And they get chewed out. Why? Because they were supposed to take the first pitch. We have a system. And when someone says, well, I'm a power hitter, he says, we didn't recruit you to be a power hitter. We recruited you to play Oakland Athletics baseball. He said, the second time they do it, quote, we put their butt on a bus and send them to Sacramento, which at the time was a minor league team for the Athletics, and they can ride the pine in Sacramento as opposed to playing the big leagues because we have a system and by God, you're going to follow it. So that this discipline, consistency, and belief in that system, that over time it will work, are the key attributes. He says, most other baseball clubs, they go hire the analysts, they go do the stuff, they buy the technology, but they don't have those three ingredients.
I love that.
Belief, and an understanding that this has to be top to bottom subscribe. We don't make exceptions on how we play baseball. And if you do, don't bother with the tech stack. It's not going to help. So Alex, thank you for that.
I love that. I'm writing it down. Consistency, belief, and system. I mean, those three things are so important. And look, I know we're getting towards the end here, Pablo, so I'm going to make a commercial here for Jim for a second. If you're on this call and you're listening to Jim and you're not, and you haven't already decided to email or call Jim, you should. Just imagine this one-on-one conversation with you about your business and how Jim can just inspire you to think a little differently about your business. Healthy consistency in your business is important. If you don't want to be one of those organizations that hires and fires based on which way the wind is blowing, you want to talk to somebody like Jim. And for those same reasons, if you join this call and you haven't talked to Sales Boomerang, just a conversation, you should have a conversation with us. Just a conversation, because one of the things you're going to get from our team is the knowledge of why retention and repeat business and referrals are so important to the consistency of building a business. And so because we're getting to the end and I want to make sure people, like you guys are here, you spent this time with us. This is just surface of what we really like to get into. And both Jim and the team at Sales Boomerang, we like the industry. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Like, we want to see you succeed if you work with us or not. Like that to us, and I know Jim believes in this. This is why Jim and I are so close in not just in friendship, but in our philosophies, is that we are part of a whole. Like all of us contribute to the success and experience of the industry. And even if you never work with us, just spending time with us is enough for you guys to have an impact on your business positively. So I love that you do these things, Pablo, and I'm just grateful that I have a chance to spend some time with you, Jim, and you, Pablo, and I love how you handle these conversations, Pablo. You just kind of shoot things out and give us a chance to riff, and I enjoy it very much. We've covered much of the sports world too.
Listen, if again for those of you that are watching this, listening to this, watching the replay, we've dropped some links in here. Go ahead and download your borrower retention playbook. That's how to keep customers coming back to your games, right? You know, if in the mortgage industry, you know, a client, a borrower does 11 transactions in a lifetime, we believe you should get all of them, not one, not two, but 11. If you meet them on number 6, then you should get the remaining 5. I don't know how many transactions Jim does on his credit card, but I'm sure Citi believes that they should get all of them. You know, and I believe that every game that you should go to, whether your team doesn't have the best on base percentage, you should go to every one of your home games. But you know, it's interesting. So we have that. I want you to download that. That's going to help you whether you work with us or not. You know, selfishly, yes, this is a promotion for Sales Boomerang, but at the same time, we want to bring you value, and that's why we love bringing in people like Jim. You know, who are good friends and definitely someone who wants to serve the industry. And so we've also dropped his link in there. Make sure you connect with him. Like Alex said, make sure you get your value. And he's the Billy Bean of the industry for you.
Yes.
So talk to the guy that you don't have to hire him as a GM for your company, but you can talk to him for, you know, maybe a few hours and really kind of deep dive in to see what's going on with your business and what are some right moves and the ways to get into the right ocean, the blue ocean with us. I do want to say something. So you talked about this Leicester team. All right, we talked about baseball. Jim was talking about going up and down the field with football. You brought up soccer. The complete opposite end of the spectrum happening right now. It was one of the biggest transfer markets in all of professional and European soccer history. You know, 2 of the biggest names in the sports, Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. Even if you don't know soccer, you know those 2 because of your kids or advertisements. They both moved to teams that no one expected a year ago would even remotely happen. And I just want to share a story about the team that Lionel Messi went to. So they have Lionel Messi, which they got essentially on a free transfer. So because it was a free agent, they didn't have to pay for him, which was incredible considering his value. So they have him. They're paying him $41 million a year. $41 million a year, right? He makes you know, like double that with endorsements. But he's also then there's also a guy named Neymar who he plays alongside, and he makes $37 million a year, right? Another home run hitter. And then there's the young up and coming all-star that's part of that same Paris Saint-Germain team called Mbappe, and he only makes a measly $18 million a year. Yeah. The PSG team was just offered 220 euros. So it's like 260 million dollars as just a transfer fee, not a salary, just a transfer fee to purchase him. Mbappe to purchase the lowest paid, but also the youngest up and coming star. And this PSG team declined it. The last day of the transfer window, there's no more offers on the table from Real Madrid. They declined it. They said, no, thank you. And the reason is because, and this is kind of my thoughts and from what I've been reading, the reason is that they're going all in on winning the big championship, the Champions League.
Yes.
This year, it's kind of it's all or bust. And Alex, you just talked about, right? Like what's going to happen with your big producers, right? They come and they go. This is like next year he'll be gone because he's going to be on free transfer. Somebody else will pick him up. His team won't have a say. Yes. And they'll have to start all over again. And and so I'm looking at it and I'm like, my goodness, it's like, what game do you really want to be in? Do you want to be in like this in the game where everyone's just throwing money at it, or in the game where you can be like Jim just shared, where you can be consistent, where you can run a team based on your beliefs and be in alignment with that, and then have a system that actually that can help do that. Jim, I have one last question, kind of selfishly for us. And I think we're down to our last minute. I didn't see any questions come through. Sales Boomerang, and I know you've worked with Alex and you guys have a great relationship. Where would you rank kind of what Sales Boomerang does, just for those that don't maybe know us enough, how important Sales Boomerang is kind of in that tech stack based on your experience?
So, in my view, Sales Boomerang, I first met Alex in 2016 and watched the presentation, got to see the product, and walked up to him and said, if you're ever looking for any investment money, please let me know. This is going to be a freaking home run. So I don't think I need to say much more, but if you want a piece of transformational technology that is really not technology, it's rather understanding human nature,
Yep.
and being able to operationalize human nature, make technology lever your people, you need to visit and have coffee with the Sales Boomerang team. That is an absolute core belief. And many of my clients that use Sales Boomerang, we look at it and it makes a huge difference. It's part of that system. It's part of that culture. So
Yes.
that's an unpaid endorsement, incidentally. I just love Alex and his team. So that's just
Thank you so much, Jim.
From the heart, man, from the heart. All right, thanks.
We
Well, there
feel
you have it,
We feel
guys.
it.
Thank you so much. The links are in the chat. Jim, it's always it's a
Always.
pleasure now, and I feel like we're connected even more so. Thank you for making such an impact in the industry and teaching others to do the same. Alex, always a pleasure. And I'm not just saying that because you signed my checks. Appreciate both of you guys.
Alex,
That's not even me. That's
well.
Aaron.
That's Aaron.
Well. All right, cheers, ladies and gentlemen.
Take care, ladies.
Thanks, Jim.
Bye-bye
Thanks,
now.
everyone. Thanks, Pablo.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.